Hello, welcome to Inside the Tape with Greg Cosell. It's an Inside the Birds presentation. I'm Geoff Mosher, of course, joined alongside Adam Caplan. And joining us every week to break down the tape of the Eagles game is NFL Films senior producer Greg Cosell. He's also the star of ESPN's NFL Matchup Show. And of course, you see him on the Inside the Birds pregame show as well, along with the Inside the Birds Patreon platform. Greg, the Eagles keep on rolling. They get to 10-2 that by outclassing the Baltimore Ravens 24-19 down in Baltimore. And Greg, I think Adam and I agree on this, and you might as well. The score probably not, or the game probably not as close as the score indicated. Once the Eagles took the lead, they really flexed their muscles there.
Yeah, I mean, it was an odd game though in that sense. I would agree, but I would also slightly disagree. I thought it
Mm-hmm.
was the kind of game where there were a lot of individual plays that if they had gone a little bit differently, we might
Yes.
be having a different conversation. I mean,
Mm.
even if Tucker makes a few field goals, we might be having a different conversation. I mean, I remember a play early where Lamar just overthrew Andrews down at what, the 2 or 3 yard line.
Yep.
You know, but that's the way close games are. So those things can, always do happen.
Yep.
But I think let's put it this way. I think the second half did have a feel that the Eagles controlled the game, but the score didn't necessarily reflect that.
Mm.
And that's the issue you sometimes face, as we've discussed with the Eagles, when you don't necessarily score a lot of points. Now they have on occasion, obviously, but it's funny. They've been they've it's an 8 game winning streak, right? They've won 8 in a row.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Um, in 5 of those 8 wins, it was a one-score game going into the fourth quarter. There's only 3 of those 8 wins. They had some big leads, but 5 of the 8 was a one-score game. And
Mm-hmm.
and while they've won those, and then people say, well, they know how to win. They throw out all the cliches. We all know that one play can change those games.
Oh, 100%. I know the Chiefs are having that same kind of discourse, right? I mean, every game they seem to win also is in the fourth quarter
Yeah,
of
I mean,
blowing it
and
out.
then you hear the ridiculous cliches. Like it's funny you mentioned the Chiefs when they blocked the field goal and they beat the Broncos, and
Yeah.
people say stuff like, "Well, they just know how to win." I mean, but that's garbage. But
Ridiculous. Yeah.
but the point is, the larger point is for a lot of these games they've pulled away in the fourth quarter with the run game,
Hmm.
but they've been one-score games going into the fourth quarter.
So, Greg, on that point about that they're able to win heading into or going through the fourth quarter, the thing that keeps them in the game or gives them the lead has been the defense. Geoff and I have been talking, on our
Yes.
shows lately that not only is the defense way better than we expected, I think it's the best in the National Football League. That some of the metrics say it is. They're not great in every category, but they're good in a lot.
Oh yeah.
We're now through 12 games here. Where's this defense? When you watch 32 teams, where's this? I know you don't rank them, but when you watch this defense, where's this at 12 games in?
I think it's really good. I think it's fundamentally sound. Um, I think they have improving individual players, which is exactly what you want as the season progresses. I think they're getting really solid contributions from some players that maybe were unexpected before the season. I think they have a lot of really good role players that maybe people, unless you follow the Eagles or follow the league closely as we do, that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of, like a Milton Williams, who's a really good football player, a Reed Blankenship, who, I've had an opportunity to talk to a coach on the staff, and he told me that he, in many ways, is the trendsetter for the defense. People
Wow.
would have no idea about that. He's a guy that I'm sure a lot of people think, well, he's the guy you got to replace. Well, they don't feel that way at all in that building. I can tell you that, as you
Mm.
guys probably know. So, I think they've just gotten, and again, Vic Fangio has been doing this a long time. Um, he does things his way, but he knows the league, he knows the players. I mean, we talked about the fact, you know, almost every team when you play the Ravens spies Lamar Jackson. They did not spy Lamar Jackson. They had another approach, and you know what? It worked. So, it's just been a combination of things, but this is and at the end of the day, the two rookies have been, look, you drafted them 1 and 2. you still couldn't expect that they play at this high a level so quickly. That's unrealistic to
Yep.
expect.
Yep.
Absolutely. Why don't we then continue with defense and we'll start our tape breakdown observations from you on the defensive side. A big part of our conversation on the pregame show last week was what Vic Fangio would do to match up against the Ravens' unique personnel looks, whether it's 12 personnel, which they do a lot of, 21 personnel. I think there were even some times, you can correct me if I'm wrong, where they were throwing an extra offensive tackle on the field. Greg, I couldn't get the number. He looked like an extra guy, a big
I don't
guy.
know if I remember that, but you could be right. But as I said to the Patreon group, I was surprised that they didn't play as much 21 and 22 personnel as they had been playing,
Hmm.
because that's really been the foundation of the Derrick Henry run game. 64% of his rushes prior to the Eagles game came out of 21 or 22 personnel, and they did not do that as much as I anticipated they would. Obviously, they had a plan. I'm not going to sit here and say I know more than Todd Monken, because I don't. But I was just surprised.
Hmm. But they did play a lot of 12 personnel, correct?
Yes.
Using Likely
Uh,
and of course
Andrews. And when
Mark
they played
Andrews.
12, the Eagles stayed nickel.
Right. So that
Right.
was sort of the first question we were going to have is how are
Yeah.
they going to match up? Because the Ravens 12 personnel you would say is different than others because they'll throw it to those tight ends maybe more than some other
Well,
teams.
and because both can detach from the formation and
Right.
essentially be deployed as wide receivers.
Right. So they did play nickel a lot more than maybe we thought given the personnel. What about base? What did you see when when the Eagles were in base? What did the Ravens do to get the Eagles in that?
That's when the Ravens went with Ricard on the field. When
Got
they
it.
were in 21 or 22 personnel, that's when the Eagles took DeJean off the field and played their, what is a 5-2 is what I call it. And in that 5-2 at times they would bring Bond from a stack position and put him on the edge, which is the same thing they did against the Saints with much more often against the Saints back earlier in the season, but that's what they did on occasion. When you do that, you pretty much have to bring down a safety, because if you just have one stacked player, that would have been Dean as the one stacked player, you don't have a cutback player. So you pretty much have to bring down someone else to play in the box so you have a cutback player.
Greg, one of the things that we thought coming into the game is that Jordan Davis may play more than usual because of the Ravens run game, but
Right.
overall, look, you told us 2 weeks ago you were concerned about him playing too high. In fact, Vic Fangio brought that up, Greg, during his press conference this week, but sometimes Davis plays too high.
Well,
Low
it's
man wins. So
well, yeah,
what
I mean, again, it doesn't make me smart. The tape told me
yeah,
that. Just
sure.
watching the tape.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Well, and Vic said the same thing about the tape. So let's talk about Jordan Davis. This is a game where there were some good plays from him. What did you see?
Yeah, I thought Jordan Davis had one of his better games of the season, and it was needed. He didn't play as much as I maybe anticipated, because
Yeah.
I anticipated more 21 and 22 personnel. So he only played 33% of the snaps. I thought this might be a game where he was more in the 50% range, but it didn't turn out that way based on the Ravens personnel. But I thought he really played well in this game. In the run game, he always has two or three plays that he flashes, but I thought just in general, in stalemating and controlling offensive linemen, even if he didn't make the play, that he did his job better than he'd done it at times in the past this season. And he even had a couple of pass rushes where he just pushed the pocket and he forced Lamar to have to move. And again, those did not come on third down, where he hardly ever plays it. This was the first game where he actually played a snap on 3rd and 6+ in a meaningful part of the game.
Hmm.
But he was a factor in this game. He was an important piece of the Eagles' run defense.
Greg, let's continue on in the front six, we'll call it. Who else stood out on the D line in that six-man front that the Eagles play a lot?
I would say that Sweat stood out. I would say that Milton Williams always stands out. He's just a really good player. I mean, obviously I haven't mentioned Jalen Carter because he's just been phenomenal the last 3 games. And in some ways, what's been most phenomenal, not just the way in which he's been playing, but the fact that he's played every snap but one in the last 3 games. Think about that for a 320-pound defensive tackle. That is very, very rare in this league. And he's played at a high level. Again, I don't never know what's in a guy's head, but when I watch him, I don't feel like he's taking plays off. I feel like he's playing with pretty high level competitiveness.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want a vignette to understand just how much has changed since week four, that's when the Eagles lost to Tampa, right? Week three or week four. In that very hot game, there was a moment where a referee came over and tapped Jalen Carter to either say something to her, and he fell over because it
Right,
was so
right.
hot and they were so not conditioned for it. And here we are, 8 weeks, 9 weeks later, and this guy, as you just mentioned, has played 99.9% of total snaps in 3 games. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
I know
That's
it's
really incredible.
and at a high level.
Right. At a high
Yeah.
level.
And one thing I would add, Greg, we had a team tell us when we were one of the Eagles opponents late last season, they felt like 98. Dave, I think Jalen Carter is 98, was not giving great effort from tape. They only have tape. That's all they could look
Yeah,
at
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
They felt that his effort could have been better. And now you're just saying like his effort has been great. And
And
the other thing,
Yeah,
Greg,
and I
I'd add
think,
is
look, there's going to be plays, obviously, that you don't, when you're 325 pounds, I learned this years ago, and I forget which GM I spoke to when I was
okay,
evaluating college players, okay? And the college game has more snaps than the NFL game, more often than not. Some teams run 95 snaps a game in a college game. That's just the nature of college
sure.
football. And I remember evaluating, it was Kawan Short. Remember him from the
Oh yeah,
Panthers?
Purdue
DT
guy.
football. Yeah, oh, really good player. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember watching him in college. I believe it was Purdue, if memory
Yep.
serves
Mhm.
me correctly.
Yes.
And he was playing like 80 snaps a game. And I remember making a note that, boy, this guy, he's not competing all the time. And I spoke to a GM and said, hey, you got, that's not the way it works. He's never going to play 80 snaps a game in the NFL. So that's not really a knock on him. He's just the size of the human being. He's not capable of doing that. So
Interesting.
when he comes to the league and plays 40 snaps a game, that won't be an issue. And of course the GM was right, and I learned something from that
So,
conversation.
Hmm.
and I would just add this, and Jeff knows this, when Vic Fangio and Clint Hurt both said Hurt, the D line coach, they mentioned not just Jordan Davis, but they mentioned Carter's conditioning specifically. That
Hmm.
was
Yep.
one thing they wanted to get, and it's obviously from their tape study. And you said it. I mean, his effort, right, has been phenomenal,
Yeah, it's
Carter.
been great. I mean, yeah, I think he's just played at a really, really high level. There's no getting around it.
Got it.
And I think Nolan Smith is another player who deserves mention because he still needs a lot of work as a pass rusher. There's no question about that. But in the run game, he's so disciplined, he's so aware, he has a savvy about him. This
Hmm.
was a game where you could not let Jackson beat you with the zone read and get out on the perimeter where he just is a different cat than everybody else. And I thought Nolan Smith had some really good snaps, forcing Jackson to hand the ball off, because that's what you'd prefer him to do, hand the ball off, and then slide down and be part of making the tackle in the run game. But he prevented him from getting outside. He made him hand it off.
Real quick before we get into the secondary, I want to ask you about a player. I want to ask you about Jalen Hunt because I feel like watching the game, he was involved in some good plays that made you
Yep.
think, man, he's really having a great game. And listen, he's a rookie third round pick and probably shouldn't have even been on the field at this point based on what we thought going into the year. But watching the tape, did you see this incredible player, or as Vic Fangio described, a guy who gives you some good snaps and then obviously some learning on some others?
I would say Vic's right, of course. I mean, he
Mhm.
knows better than I.
Sure.
But as I said the other night, he belongs. That's the key thing. You can tell he belongs. He's not overmatched. I think when Vic's talking about bad snaps, and he certainly knows the techniques and the specifics of his defense better than I do, but I'm sure he's talking about maybe not executing exactly the way you're supposed to, or maybe not using his hands exactly the way they want him to. But he's not talking about the fact that he doesn't belong on the field.
Right.
And
Right.
he does belong. And that's the first step for a guy coming out of a small school and even before that, playing at Cornell, where he wasn't even an outside linebacker. So, you're dealing with a guy that has a lot of hurdles to get to this point. And Jeff, you nailed it. In an ideal world, they probably didn't anticipate him having to play as many snaps as he's now playing, in week 12 of his first season,
Hmm.
or week 13, I guess it was. Sorry, week
Yeah,
13.
week 13.
Yeah.
So let's move to the back end, the secondary. We'll talk specifically about the corners and the safeties. What jumped out at you, either from schematic standpoint, one high, two high, or a player individual standpoint?
You know, it was an odd game in that sense, Jeff. I didn't feel like they got tested a lot in this game. It didn't that I just didn't feel watching, look, when I watch Sunday, I watch Red Zone. I'm not going to lie to people and tell them, "Oh, I study every Eagles play on Sunday." I watch Red Zone, because I know I'm going to study the tape in detail. And I like hearing all the different announcers and all the different stuff. So, So when I watched the tape, I just didn't feel like they got tested a ton on the perimeter. It just the game didn't have that feel to me. I don't know
Right.
what you guys thought,
I
but
agreed. I
it didn't
agree.
feel that way to me. But I think overall, and talking overview after 12 games and 13 weeks, I think that you can't possibly be anything but elated with the way Quinyon Mitchell has played. You can't possibly be anything but excited about Cooper DeJean.
Mhm.
Those guys have played at a really, really high level with savvy, with a see, that's the thing. A lot of guys come in the league and you love their physical traits, and then they come in and they just takes them time to really get acclimated to the NFL and to do all the little things that are necessary. I was told by a guy on the staff that Quinyon Mitchell came in and he's a true pro right off the bat. Like he's just got that personality that he's just a pro. And I guarantee Cooper DeJean is probably the same.
Mm, that's it. It's been a long time since the Eagles have really nailed the draft when it comes to the secondary. So it's interesting. Oh, one thing, Greg, and I know Avonte Maddox is not playing very much, and he's had
No, he
some
only played 2 snaps.
right. And unfortunately, one of them he had a penalty, the other
Yeah, he
one
did. Yeah.
he almost gave up a deep sideline throw. So it people have asked us, and we're like, let me ask Greg. So other than Maddox, in terms of dime personnel, is there someone like maybe when Slay comes back, could you see Rodgers playing dime? Or I mean, I don't know what else they can do.
Well, I would have to know if they practice there because,
Okay.
that's the thing. You can't just decide on Saturday night, we're going to play this guy at
No,
dime.
no, they would do it
Right.
during the week. No, I
Right. So you have
understand,
to
but
practice that. So I don't know, maybe you
is,
guys, because you do a little more of that kind of work than I do.
yeah,
I just sit on my ass all day watching tape. But
that's
but
funny.
if you can find out if
Yeah,
someone else is
I'm curious.
practicing there,
Yeah.
but
I think
until go
I don't
ahead.
know that they have to your point. We know that Quinyon Mitchell practiced at nickel interior corner all of camp, but they don't want to take him
No,
away
they
from the
want him to
outside.
play right corner and he's
Right.
become so good at it. They don't want to
Right.
change that.
So no one else has really practiced there. The only other situation, if you want to have that many defensive backs on the field, but not Maddox, would be to play an extra safety and be in a big nickel. But I don't sense that they like
Right.
Sidney Brown in that situation either. So it goes back to the question: do you just try to not
And
play
they don't play a lot of
dime?
snaps a dime, by the way. So
I know.
it's,
Yeah,
I don't want to say it's not a big deal because every snap is a big deal for a coach, even
right.
if it's 2 snaps. Every snap's important, but it's not like they're a 20% dime defense. They don't play a ton of dime.
Right. It does seem though the few
I
snaps of
know.
time they play that Maddox gets targeted, and even the one he got a holding on, which was the early in the game, was the first
Yeah.
pass. He and Rogers covered the same guy and left
Yeah.
Andrew. If Lamar had seen Andrews, it would have been what a 50
Yeah.
yard, 60
And then
yard
the one
pass.
that Adam just mentioned was when he did get beat by Aguilar, who should have caught that ball. And who knows if that changes the game.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, but you're right, Jeff. It seems like they find him when he's out there.
All right, let's take a look at some all 22. And Greg, I want to talk about a player that you've already discussed that you were impressed with. All right. So as I mentioned, Greg, this is an important part of the game. The Eagles have punted. They're down 9-0. The Ravens are pinned in their own territory here, and the Eagles need someone to make a play. Let's talk about what's going to happen here and what you're seeing.
Well, clearly what the Ravens wanted to do, because they've come out with Ricard and 6 offensive linemen. So what
Hmm.
they want to do is clearly give the ball to Derrick Henry, be physical, have him get them out of this bad territory situation. And again, we know that Henry can also go 94 yards for a touchdown. He's done that in his career. But that's the whole plan here.
Hmm.
This is physical football. This is the way the Ravens want to play. So what do the Eagles do? They line up in their 5-2 front. You can see big Jordan Davis right in the middle. He's going to be basically the no shade, the zero technique. And now you've got to buck up and stop the run game. This is where you just have to be physical.
Right.
You have to control and stalemate and ideally defeat the guy in front of you, but you certainly have to control and stalemate him. You cannot get pushed back.
Right. So he's lined up, as you mentioned, over center. I'm going to run it
He's
here.
kind of in a one technique, so
Right.
he's
Now,
going to work against.
yeah, is this what you would call slanting, the way everybody goes one way here?
Yeah, yeah, they're
Look at him
gonna.
shed.
Yeah,
Look at him shed
yeah,
really
they're
well.
gonna.
Nice.
So no, so he beats the guard Makari, who had a really tough game, by the way. And
Yeah, that's a nice swing move, right?
Makari's not
Yeah, yeah,
expecting that lateral quickness. He's not expecting the slant. He thinks
yeah.
he can go right into Davis, but Davis slants and then gets
Those long
involved
arms.
here. He's
Hmm.
responsible for this play because you can see as you run it again, Geoff, right? Henry had to
Hmm.
uh, change direction in the backfield, which a back never wants to do
Right.
because of Jordan Davis's quick penetration.
Hmm.
So, Davis didn't get a tackle here, but he made the play.
Right. And
His
nice job,
CO.
I believe, by Sweat setting the edge to make
Yep.
sure he
Yep.
can't bounce it to the outside either.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
actually,
Really good.
then that's 97 is Jomo, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
Cleaning it up.
he sheds his block too. I mean,
Yeah.
this is what you have to do here because they actually run power because they pull the
The
right
right
guard.
tackle. Yeah, the right guard. Yes, you're right.
They pull the right guard.
That was a nice job by N'Kobe Dean here as you
No,
talk about
actually,
the,
it's Dean. Excuse me, it's Dean.
yeah,
17, right there.
that's
Yeah,
what it was.
that's what
Yeah.
Dean does really well. Dean's
Yep.
not going to take that on because he
Right.
knows he'd get swallowed up. So what he has to do is he has to beat it with angle and leverage, and that's what he
Yeah.
does.
And
Nice
Davis
job.
got low. If you notice, his
Yeah.
shoulders are lower.
No,
That is
you're right. You're exactly right.
Yep. Yep. And look, he even puts a dive in there at the. I mean, this
Yeah.
is it's not like the first play of the game, so he's been in
No.
there and he drags him down. So good
nice.
stuff there. And as you mentioned, there were a couple of I thought Greg, a couple of plays that really jumped out. He even had a pass rush. I think you mentioned this on a first or a second down
Yeah, he pushed
where
back.
he
I
showed
think it
some
was the
similar
center,
juice.
maybe. I can't recall, but it might have been Linderbaum, who's very strong, by the way. He was a wrestling champ, and he
Yeah.
pushed it back and forced Jackson to move.
Yeah, those Iowa guys, they all wrestled.
I know
Even
they do.
did Cooper DeJean
And
wrestle? I bet
Gable.
he wrestled too.
Dan Gable, there's a good name from the
You like
past.
that?
Love it.
You like
Love it.
that? I know my old school college wrestler.
Yeah.
It's about the only one I know.
Olympic champion Dan Gable.
Oh, and then yeah. There are a couple others, but anyway.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, I want to also draw our attention to another, really significant series. This is in the second quarter. I believe the Eagles have now gone ahead. All right, they're up 14-12, but they're trying to stop the Ravens now from driving. So the Ravens are at the 47 here of the Eagles, Greg. It's their final drive of the half, as
Right.
I said. And the left side of the screen is what we're gonna look at here, because what happens on this play is you're gonna have Josh Sweat dropping. You're gonna have Nolan Smith, who you mentioned. Nolan Smith is going to be the guy who comes in and gets the sack. So do you recall
Right.
the
He
play?
gets the sack because Jackson could not make the throw that he wanted to make. Yes.
Right.
Chris.
So the action is kind of here on the left side, right, where
Yep.
these three receivers are, and Nolan Smith is at the top of the screen. So I'll let you kind of set it up from there.
Yeah, well, you can see that it's a 3-by-1 set. It's a trips bunch to the basically to the wide side of the field, and the Eagles are in their 4-2 nickel.
Mhm.
So DeJean is over the trips part of the formation, and Nolan Smith is at the top of the screen. But Josh Sweat is the D end down below. So he's not going to rush here. He's going to drop. So you
Right.
can run this, Geoff, and we'll see
And I
exactly
guess
what
the
happens.
key is Lamar just thinks he's in his normal, spot
Right,
there and
which
going to
most
rush.
quarterbacks would.
Right.
Because there's
So,
nothing that looks different about this look right now. There's no indicator or key that says something different is going to happen.
right. So here's where we get the ball snapped after the receiver goes in
So
motion.
what happens is this is going to be a sim pressure, a
Yep.
four-man pressure with Dean, the fourth rusher, and Baun Baun is a second level player, but he drops and
Mhm.
Sweat drops.
Yep. So here are your two droppers, and here's Sweat, as I believe that's Flowers
It
trying
is.
to run the slant in front of him.
Right, and you can see Lamar's looking that way.
Yep. Yep. And he's got nowhere to go with it. And then I thought it was pretty cool how Sweat, if you're still
Well,
watching
I
him.
think that what happens is I think Sweat does a great job right here
Yep.
because if what they're doing is they're bringing the backside shallow crosser to be the route that if he didn't like,
Hmm.
because he's basically looking for something a little deeper here, Geoff.
Yep.
But if he doesn't have it, the backside crosser is essentially the check down, so to speak, here. And
Got it.
Sweat's in perfect position to take away that backside shallow crosser, and Lamar has no throw.
And look at the two Ravens run into each other. It's a 43, the running back, Hill, and the lineman or two. Yeah, boy.
Yeah, he's
they
trying
both
to.
moved.
43 Hill is trying to help in pass protection,
Yeah,
but he's
too
kind of
late.
gets knocked out by
Yeah.
by the blitz of, is that Nakobe who blitz? We'll take a look at the other
Nakobe
angle.
was the fourth rusher here in the four-man sim zone exchange pressure because they're playing zone behind this.
Right. And this is a good example, I would say, of when your coverage and pressure are married, right? Because Lamar
Yep.
has to hold on. Look at how the defensive tackles and the rushers and the pass rushers are
Well,
able to get on him because of that.
Lamar's looking for Flowers on the outcut. That's who
Yep.
he wants to throw the ball to.
Mm-hmm.
So
And when it wasn't there.
Sweat's not taking away that throw. That throw got taken away, uh, I believe, by DeJean. But so then
Let's
the
go back
next,
to that. So here's Flowers right there. That is Sweat.
Yep. That's what.
but keep
Oh,
going,
I
Jeff.
see what you're saying. Okay, okay.
Flowers
Yeah,
is going to run the outcut.
right. So right now, right
That's
There's
where he
here.
wants
DeJean.
to throw the ball.
Yep.
Because the
It's
outside
Cooper.
receiver, I think it's Aguilar, he's a lift player. He's lifting the corner, and so DeJean takes away the outcut, and
Mm-hmm.
Sweat takes away what is essentially the check down, the shallow crosser.
It's
Mhm.
just good coverage right there, and then you let your front
And
rush
then
eat.
and then Smith, who wins off the edge, can run down Lamar.
Right. Great stuff there.
Yeah, it's
That's
good marriage of coverage and pressure.
absolutely. We talk about that a lot and how vital that marriage is, and it really came through there. And it was just a couple of plays later, I think right after that too, where they get another really significant play here. Greg, this is going to be the Jalen Carter sack that originally looked like it was going to be intentional grounding. You remember because his knee was down as he threw the ball
Yeah.
away.
Yep.
All right, Greg. So this was just a few plays later, and it's really vital because the Ravens are now deeper in the Eagles' territory, and again, trying to erase their deficit. So what we're going to see here is, go ahead.
Well, what they're going to do again, it's 3-by-1 and it's trips bunch to the field, and they're going to run a very common route, two-man route concept that everybody runs to the field in this part of the field. It's called Dino. So it's basically two kind of short post routes, but
Mhm.
Dino is what everybody calls it. So if you just run that part of it, Jeff, and then we'll come back to the other part, you can see that is that Andrews, who's the point
Yes.
man in the bunch?
Yep, Andrews up front is the
Okay, so
number
Andrews is going to eat
2.
up the safety, and ideally they want to get the ball to the second, to the outside, and I think that's Bateman. Yes,
Yep.
that's who you'd ideally like to get the ball to here, but the Eagles play this really, really well.
Yeah. And I think it's significant, Greg, because last year this is the type of formation where two guys would be wide open against the Eagles because they just didn't know how to communicate and defend it well, or they just didn't do it well.
Yeah, it's Dino because you're counting on Andrews to eat up the safety, and then you throw. Well, actually, Bateman's going to break outside, so they're playing off the Dino concept
Uh-huh.
because that's a really well-known concept that everybody runs, and you can see that Mitchell actually for a second, this is theoretically open. I
Uh-huh.
mean, Mitchell
Right
does
here.
get body lean. If that ball were to be thrown, to the outside, this would be a touchdown.
Hmm.
So, but the pressure prevented Lamar from doing that. Let's see if
Exactly.
it did or did not.
Yep,
Oh,
because
Oh,
yes.
he couldn't
Josh
have done
Sweat
it.
comes around the edge and
Initially,
yeah,
Sweat that prevented it. Sweat was the reason that Jackson had to leave the pocket.
thought Sweat played a
And he
pretty
got
steady.
Stanley. That was Stanley, correct? The left tackle?
Yep. Yep,
Yep,
that's Ronnie
yep.
Stanley. And by the way, the other route, the Flowers route, he does this little dipsy do here at the 15. I thought that was a good job by DeJean to kind of stay with him there.
Yeah, well, he was trying to adjust his route once he saw,
Yep.
because he's not truly part of this play. I mean,
Right.
he'd be a late part of it if it got to that.
Right. And then obviously the pressure was already there. And then from the other angle, just to see Sweat give Stanley the business here and really work him. See, this is good
But
marriage again between
Good
coverage.
hands.
Lamar can't make the throw, and then he can't adjust to the one you said that where he's opening end zone.
well,
because
this
he's
is
now
where the
on run.
pressure was first because it might have been a touchdown if he could have sat in the pocket
Mhm.
securely, but he moves.
Mm-hmm.
It would have
And
been
again, this is where a lot of quarterbacks who are movers are different. Like someone like Jared Goff might have just stepped up and still thrown the ball because
Right, I was gonna
that's
say,
what he's
'cause
done his whole career, his
you would have
whole
to give
life
everybody.
playing quarterback. Lamar, his whole life playing quarterback, leaves the pocket and makes plays
Right.
because he has room to just step up and deliver this ball.
I guess I'll go back to the when he
Say.
when the receiver is open, and we're talking now about Bateman here
Step
at the
up.
5. Right now, you say is probably when he should throw it, but it looks like
Correct.
Lamar's already on the run. I don't.
Yeah, because he's
That's
left the
tough.
pocket.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah, you're right.
right.
The pressure the pressure forced him on the run, and then the coverage, married with that. So that's great stuff right there.
Right.
And of course, Jalen Carter, very aggressive in cleaning up. All right, so those were the defensive clips I wanted to get through. There was also a really good play. We don't have to look at it, but in the third quarter, there was a Zach Bond blitz where he kind of came through, where the Eagles once again defended the left side bunch formation, and then it was a nice sim pressure, and Bond came in and got the sack.
You're talking about the sack that he split with Hunt?
Yes, you want to take a look at it real quick?
No, I know it. I mean,
Oh,
I
okay.
wrote it out. I mean, he was the fifth rusher with cover one behind it.
Hmm.
DeJean matched up to Andrews with Gardner Johnson unlikely because they were in 12.
Right.
Vaughn beat Hill, who crossed the formation to account for him, and Hunt got the edge on Stanley. And the Eagles ran a TT stunt inside with Carter the picker and Williams the looper to
Hmm.
control the left guard McCurry so they could prevent him from reacting to Vaughn's C-gap pressure. It was really well designed.
All right. Well, since you said it, now I'm gonna really quickly run it because we only have two on offense that we're gonna get through, and it's gonna be pretty easy.
They're going to run a pressure here. It's going to be a five-man pressure with cover one behind it. Cover one meaning it's man coverage with a single high safety,
Hmm.
and it's going to be Blankenship. So what they're going to do, Bond's going to be the fifth rusher. So he's going to attack through the C gap, but well, they also add a TT stun, meaning tackle tackle stun,
Hmm.
because what they you see that the Ravens picked this up with Hill, the back, crossing the formation. And
Right
the
there.
reason they wanted to run the TT stun is they didn't want McCarry, the left guard, to be able to fall off and pick up Bond on his pressure.
Right.
So therefore they wanted to get the matchup of Bond on Hill, which favors the Eagles, which you'll see it does here.
Yep.
Mm. Sidesteps him.
And in
Ouch.
addition, you can see that this was a good rush by Jalen Hunt on the outside,
Yep.
getting the edge on Stanley.
Yeah. I don't
Good
think
hand.
Stanley's a pretty good tackler, or at least he's been throughout his career. But I mean, I think you observed the same thing as me, is that he got worked by Sweat, by Hunt a couple of times. He
He
just
did.
yeah,
Good
yeah,
stab. It's really nice.
yeah. And he's got
Ooh,
those
wow.
long arms. It really helps
Yeah.
him.
What were they? 34 and three quarters, did we say?
Yeah, that's what you said the other night. Yeah.
Yeah, like watch it from this angle. By the way, everybody seems to
Good.
want to call him like Trent Cole because he wears the same number and plays the same spot. But no offense to Trent, but this guy's like 10 times the athlete I think that Trent
And
is.
he's just way bigger and longer.
Yeah, yeah. You see how he just puts his hand right into Stanley right there?
Yeah.
Hands
Wow.
right
He
to
got
him.
Jeff, he got him turned.
Yep.
That's not a good thing when you're an offensive lineman. You're in trouble.
He
Yeah.
used his hands well there. He used his
Yep.
outside arm well.
Yep.
Yep.
And then got
No,
to him.
that's a really well designed scheme. And the TT stunt part's critical because if McCarry decided to come off when he saw Bond, then the looper and the stunt is going to get in clean. So
Right.
it all goes together.
Right. Awesome. All right, let's
Nice.
transition to offense, Greg. We know there was not a throw game, only 19 passes, 11 completions. What did you see from the offensive line and the rushing attack from the Eagles before we get into the passing stuff?
You know, the Ravens have a good front. So I mean, the Eagles did not have big rushing numbers, throughout the game until again, Barkley only had 44 yards going into the fourth quarter. Um, the Eagles only ran 54 offensive plays, which is a low number in the NFL. So their offense, they do some good things, but they're not really an explosive offense in terms of the pass game. And that's something I think they have to work on because at some point we assume that they're going to need that. We assume.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've been saying that week after
Yeah,
week, and they
Yeah.
haven't.
yeah,
But yeah, you get into the playoffs, you face the high-scoring teams, whether it's the Lions or the Packers. Yeah, you're probably gonna have to score some more points.
yeah.
Um,
And
Go
so
ahead.
we'll see. But we talked about this a lot with the Patreon group, and I'm actually going to do a piece on it in the matchup show this
Okay.
week on the Eagles no huddle. And I'm actually going to do the four plays that ended with Goddard's touchdown because I think that's one thing they do every week that Jalen is really good at. I think he really controls the game well in the no huddle. They get a lot of positive plays. And again, it doesn't have to be a 50-yard play. It's just understanding what you're looking at and then calling a play that attacks the weakness of that defensive look. He did that on the Barkley 25-yard touchdown, by the way. That came out of no huddle. But he's been really good at that, and they do it selectively throughout every game, and they're
Is
very
it
good at it.
is it when they're in 11 or in 12 or both? Does it seem to matter at all?
Um, this week they did it out of 11.
Okay.
I'm sure they've done it out of both. I
Sure,
can't
sure.
remember,
Yeah.
but I'm sure they've done it out of both.
Well, people have, I know you were asked the other night on Patreon, if this is what makes Jalen Hurts comfortable to operate fast and no huddle, can they do this more? And I would question, like, can you do it more if you're alternating between 11 and 12 personnel the way they do? I mean, it's you have to substitute, so you got to huddle in those cases.
Right. I mean, theoretically, you can go no huddle as much as you want, but I think teams don't like to do that as an every play thing
Sure.
because you want to feel like you can kind of, get together, discuss, talk, call a play, let the coach in your ear run through some alerts and some potential red flags based on the situation. I mean, it's they're not going to do it every play, but they do
Right.
it selectively and they do it well.
Right. And obviously, that second quarter RPO touchdown to Dallas Goedert, that was an almost entire drive of no huddle
That
after
was
the
a
first
zone
play.
read with an RPO tag.
Right. Um, so let's ask you this. One of the Ravens' best players is Nnamdi Madubuike, defensive tackle,
He
right?
was not really a factor in the game.
I was going to
Yeah.
ask you why that was. Is that just something the Eagles did well, you think? Or,
Yeah, well, the Eagles have the biggest pair of offensive guards in the league.
yeah.
I mean, those guys probably weigh about 1,500 pounds combined. Um, no, they got the biggest, I mean, their all lines played really well. I mean, and the thing is, there's a mentality that goes with that. They know how they're going to play every week. They know they're going to stay with the run game. They know they're going to be moving forward and not pass protecting on every single play. And that builds a mentality. And you just know that that's how you're going to play, and you like that.
Hmm.
One thing before we get to the clips here, real quick. Jordan Mailata, we I can't remember the last time we talked about him. We might talk about him passing, but how do you think he's played this season overall? We know he was hurt, but
Yeah, he missed
how's he
what,
look?
4 games?
Yeah, hamstring. Yeah.
Um,
How's he look to you?
again, I'm not studying him in detail, but he
Yeah.
hasn't done bad things. I mean,
Snaps are good.
yeah, yeah. I also think it's worth saying before we get to the plays that Hurts did have two really good throws. He had a big time window throw between the hashes to Brown for 15 yards. We don't see that very much from Jalen. It was good to see. And then on the same possession, they ran a high-low concept, which they don't run a ton of. And he read it perfectly, and he hit Brown on the inbreaker. So that was great execution of a pretty staple concept. But we've talked through this season that there are times he hasn't done that. But I thought those two plays were just really, really positives. I mean, that's just good quarterbacking.
Good.
Awesome. Was the window throw you're referring to a under center from under center play action?
Can't remember.
Well, let's take a look at this clip here because I think this might be the play you
Yeah.
described. It was the first play on their touchdown drive that ended in the touchdown to Dallas Goedert here. They're at the 32. It is the first play. You see they are downhill. They're under center, I should say, Greg,
Yeah.
which is something that they're starting to do more of. And it's obviously, as we set this up, they're trying to make the Ravens think they're going to run here because it looks like they're also in.
They're in
Well,
12.
actually, they're in not. Is it? Yeah,
No.
yeah, they're in 12. That's a tight end.
Probably
That's a tight
Calcaterra.
end in
Yeah.
line. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's look at it.
Yeah, because they're in 12, they probably, and I believe this is first down, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, first play of the drive.
Okay, so they get a single high. They get 8 in the box, single high.
Hmm. And I'm glad you point out this play because I know some people might say, well, it's play action, it's a schemed open throw, it's the only read. But I thought the linebackers for the Ravens got good depth
They
despite the play
did. This
action
is the
here.
play. This is
That's the way.
outside split flow, outside zone run action. And the Ravens go kind of basic cover three, I believe it is. Let me
Hmm.
see
Yeah.
again, just to be sure. If you go back a little, Jeff, it's cover three.
The
Yep.
They go
timing
base,
throw.
they
That's
go
nice.
base cover three. So now you've got to stick this throw
That's a
with
window.
timing and
That's a great throw.
anticipation between
Wow.
the two hook defenders.
Yep.
Okay.
Hmm.
So now the key is when you throw this ball. Go back, Jeff. Freeze it just before he separates his hands if you can.
Sure. So we're gonna go.
If you go slow, even if he just starts to separate him, go a little. Keep going.
Set.
Now, stop. Look where Brown is and
Hmm.
look where he's going to catch the ball. This is what window throws are in the NFL.
Yep.
These, like Matthew Stafford's as good as there is in the NFL. Jared Goff's as good as there is in the NFL. These are throws you have to be able to make in the NFL because Brown's going to catch this ball between those two defenders, and look where he is now. So this is what anticipation and timing is. He
Great throw.
catches it between the hashes. This
Geoff,
is a
by the
big
way,
time, this is a big time NFL throw.
great throw. This is what Irvin Fryer talked about on WIP a couple of weeks ago. It was Jalen just doesn't do this. Well, he did it here, and it
Right.
shows he's capable of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
He stuck that back foot, and that ball's out, and that's a great timing throw. That's a big time throw,
That's a
Greg.
big
No
time
question.
throw.
Yeah, I learned that from
Absolutely.
you and Jaws about
Yeah.
throwing with anticipation. You're throwing the ball to a spot you expect your pass target to go get it. It's a great throw.
Yeah,
No,
and this, I just want to say, we Adam, you remember I almost stopped abruptly in the post game show to say, hey, listen, we've got to give Jalen Hurts credit where it's due because we say these are not the type of throws, but he made about 2 or 3 of these throws. This one might have been the best one.
This was
but
the
he
best
did make a
one.
couple
The other one to
throws.
Brown was a high-low, which was really good too, but this one was better.
It's exceptional. And against the Rams, he had a couple timing throws, but nothing like this. This is a tremendous football throw. Like this is big time.
Got to be happy if you're the coaching staff to have seen that.
See, these throws are what an offense like the Rams and the Lions are built on. The Eagles' offense isn't built on it because Jalen normally doesn't make those kinds of throws. That's not the way he sees the game.
Right.
But that was a great throw. As Adam said, you got to call it as you see it. That was a great throw.
Big time throw. I do what. Okay, so on what Greg just said. Now, yes, historically he doesn't make those throws. Maybe there's more involved here, folks. We'll see. We don't have that answer.
We don't know. We'll see.
But we're going to look
forward.
for it. I'm sure he's all going to look for it. We'll see.
All right, so this is the touchdown to Dallas Goedert that we're going to review here.
So
now I just want to set this up, Greg, because to your point, after that catch by AJ Brown and that beautiful throw is when they get into a series of no-huddle plays to which they work the ball down here.
Yes.
Okay. So go ahead.
And this is the last no-huddle play. And what they're going to run here is zone read with an RPO tag, okay?
Can you explain what an RPO tag means on that?
Yes. So what's going to happen here is first let's walk through the play.
Okay.
So it's a zone read initially because look, he takes the snap, look at the mesh point right there. There's stop it. There's an unblocked edge defender. This is what you get in a zone read. Okay. So that's the zone read part of the play. If he crashed hard inside, Jalen could have just kept the ball and run on the perimeter. Okay. Because notice that Brown, the outside receiver up top, is running off his guy, and Goddard initially is potentially looking to block because look, his eyes are forward. So that's the zone read element. If that unblocked defender crashed hard inside, Jalen could have kept the ball and run, okay?
Right.
But he did not crash. So now, Geoff, you go to the RPO part of the play. That's the RPO tag. So now Jalen can look to run if he wanted to, but now he looks to Goddard in the flat because what now ensues is Brown, in a sense, becomes a natural picker on Kyle Hamilton, and Goddard he outflanks Hamilton to the edge, and he just flicks him the ball. This is a staple of what they do. It's a zone read with an RPO tag.
Love it. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong. They score a touchdown here. They get the ball back. On the very next drive, they get into a similar spot, right?
They run a very similar play.
And they run it just on the right side of the field.
Correct.
But this time, the safety, who I believe is 29, Ardarius Stewart, he played far more up on Goddard so that he wouldn't get caught in the wash the way Hamilton did on it. And Goddard still got the catch, but he only got 9 yards out of it.
Right, because they'd seen it, and it's a staple for the Eagles. It's a very cool play, and it plays off Jalen's running, which is such a critical piece of the like. You're not going to see the Lions or the Rams run this play,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, great play. And by the way, you talk about fractions of a second, this ball is delivered on time.
Yep.
Well enough to lead him. It's not, this play could have not been a touchdown if the throw is not so good.
Yeah. Look at Brown. He's not getting the ball under any circumstance. He's not even looking to run a route.
No, he is not.
Right.
I'm glad
that's what I mean. I'm sorry, Adam. That's what I mean, Geoff, by an RPO tag.
Yeah.
That's the second part of the play.
Absolutely. Which, by the way, goes to show you how much a quarterback has to process in that moment. There were literally three different, and not just the quarterback, because same thing with Goddard and
Right.
the O-line. There were three different things that could have happened on that play, and it all worked in unison.
Geoff, Jalen is making quicker decisions. That is the key. I know they don't throw the ball a lot. He doesn't drop back to throw a lot. But when
Mhm.
you do, the ball's got to be out, the back foot out. He sees on that out route. It's not a hard throw, but that's not the point. The point is the ball's got to be out. If he hesitates, as you said, it's a good point. That ball's dead. The play's
Look,
dead. It'll be deflected.
look, the bottom line is this. Everybody, including the people in their building, know what Jalen's strengths and weaknesses are.
Mhm.
One thing he's very good at is controlling the game. He's very good at that. He has a very good feel. That's why they run a lot of no-huddle. He controls the game and he doesn't make mistakes.
Right.
And I can tell you that cannot be overstated. He does not make mistakes and he does not turn. Has he turned the ball over in the last 6, 7, 8 games?
I think he's had one turnover, right, in the last
Yeah.
7 or 8 games. Ever since that first four where he was averaging 2 a game, yeah,
He doesn't turn the ball over.
right.
And with
Yep.
their defense, and so every team that gets the ball, if they do have to punt, has a pretty long field.
There you go. All right, Greg, before we get out of here, give me 30 seconds on the Panthers.
Oh, geez. Well, first of all,
I mean, they won 2 in a row, and then they almost won 2 in a row. So they're
yeah,
playing better.
I think that Bryce Young looks like just a more confident player right now. He's making better throws, quicker decisions, not getting stuck in the pocket as much. And it's funny. I watched their defense today actually, and their defense has some pretty good players. They've got 2 good veteran safeties who are smart and savvy, in Jordan Fuller and Xavier Woods. Both guys have been around the league quite a bit. Josie Jewell, you'll remember Josie Jewell, Penn State, Iowa, years ago. Jeff, Josie Jewell, I think, had like 20 tackles in that game. There were times he
all
covered
10 to 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
right,
on
but there were times
Saquon.
he even covered Barkley one-on-one in
Wow.
pass coverage.
What a name, by the way.
Yeah.
Joe's.
Obviously they don't have great players throughout their defense, but their defense is not bad. And J.C. Horn, that'll be interesting. He normally plays boundary corner. I'll be very curious to see if they make him a matchup on Brown. But the other corner, Michael Jackson, is 6'2", 210, so he's not little. So they may feel he can match up, and they don't need to flop their corners.
And Giro Avero is a former Vic disciple there. So
That's right.
we'll see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Jordan Fuller was an Ohio State guy. I feel like it always comes back to Big Ten.
And he's actually a North Jersey guy originally, I believe.
That is correct. That is correct.
Yeah.
All right. That was wonderful. Great tape breakdown.
job.
Great observations as usual from you. So for Greg Cosell and Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. You've been watching Inside the Tape with Greg Cosell.